Hello.
Hi. Hi everyone. Welcome to SpaceXScout Live by Manrva. I'm Kik from Orbiters, and today I'm here with my co-host, Julia from
Hello.
Manrva. Today we are going to talk about how scouting inspire interest in space exploration. First, we need to talk about Peter. Can you show the slides? Show the presentation. Okay, thank you. First, we need to talk about education and youth program. What is education? It is a inter, integral development of a person and the process of facilitating learning or the acquisition of knowledge, skills, values, morals, beliefs, habits, and personal development. And youth program is to improve the life of children and adolescents by meeting their basic physical, developmental, and social needs, and by helping them to build the competency needed to become successful adults. While education helps children to have hard skill and youth program helps children to have soft skill. With both, they can become successful and happy adults. Okay, let's move to next presentation. All right, this is my article that I wrote on my website www.orbiters.space. I wrote about young people's situation in Thailand and how the government treat us compared with how NASA treat young people. I believe that new generation is powerful. This can be good or bad, depend on how adults treat them. Let's move on to the next topic. What is World Scout? Next presentation. Okay. Our World Scout, founded in 1907, founded by Lord Robert Baden-Powell. He was a soldier, writer, and also a founder of the World Scouting movement. It is the largest international scouting organization. It had 172 members. These members are recognized national scout organizations, which collectively have over 50 million participants. And scouting provides young people with opportunity to participate in program, event, activities, and projects that contribute to their growth as active citizens. Through this initiative, young people become agents of positive change who inspire others to take action. But I need to ask Julia more about in-depth information about World Scout.
All right. So, just to make it kind of simple, actually, World Scout organizations and movement and scouting is kind of like two separate entities, but it's the same in a sense that it's, promoting like scouting, right? Like as Kik said, it's, providing young people the opportunity to participate in events or programs that could potentially help them become more responsible adult. And then with the World Scout, World Organization of the Scout Movement, it's like a movement. It's like a collective. That's why it had like 172 members. I'm not sure the precise like number now, but one of our panelists might be able to give you even more in-depth information on the scoutings and then, World Scout organization as well. But yeah, it's basically a collective of different nationals make up to one entity. And sometimes we have like even like jamboree and things like that. So in total, we have, approximately at least 50 million participants all around the world who are doing scouting. And that's why it's about like education's youth program and scouting, because this is our main inspiration for this program as well. Because if we have to talk about how scouting and space could be relatable, have you ever been to camping or scouting before, Gig?
Yeah, I had to.
Do you like it?
No, not at all.
And I mean, just to make it kind of simple, from your own like perspective, do you think how could these two topics like related to one another?
Mm, I'm not sure about this, and I'm waiting to hear Daniel, Alif, and Yulia talk about this. Oh, is this spoil?
No, we're good. All right, so yeah, like let's talk about scouting a little bit, and then the similarities with space explorations. Yeah, when you go camping, you sometimes you spend overnight, and what do? With your friends, sometimes you just lay under the stars and stargaze and look up in the skies. And I'm sure for many people, I mean, for me for sure, at least, it's definitely my first experience on seeing a Milky Way with my own eyes, through camping. And
Wow.
that in itself inspire something in me, and now potentially inspiring my interest in space. And with scouting, sometimes we have activities like constellations, navigations, how you use how you have to learn how to use like compass or stars, the sun, the moon, to navigate directions, like where you have to be and stuff. And also scouts in nature are the explorer, just like space explorations, like if you have your love for space, you feel the same way, you also explore as well, different planets and then life beyond Earth and things like that. And it also depends on where you are, or like which country you're from. Different scout programs are different, and especially in today's world, we invest a lot into STEM program as well. And as you see here, like in scouting, right? Sometime when you do all these activities, you earn merit badge. And this is one is from Boy Scout of America. So they have a specific badge for like space explorations. And in order for you to achieve this, you have to go through a certain requirement. And just to summarize it a little bit, you need to know about the history of space explorations and then the purpose of it. And they also have to learn how to kind of like build a rocket, how to launch it, and then how to reuse it as well. So I'm sure it's, the information that I just gave you now, it's definitely much different than the scouting we know back in our childhood, right? And then there's another inspiration for this event as well, because I think next year upcoming, Canberry, this is happening in the UK. And I found this in the scouting website. So the entire activity zones were inspired by different planets. And within those, zones, the activities tend to evolve around space and STEMs too. So yeah, that's why you kind of start seeing the similarities, and then you kind of question why are they promoting this in scouting as well, and then where it's going to go from here. So yeah.
Well, this kind of cool. Thank you,
Yeah.
Julia.
You're welcome.
Okay, before we move on to our panelists, I need to remind you guys, the audience, that the Q&A session will be open at the end of the session. And today we have it our three special guests. Guys, please tell us briefly about yourselves. Let's start with Daniel and then Alif and Yulia. Please.
Hello, my name is Daniel, and I'm from the United States, and I'm a former Eagle Scout in the BSA. And I guess just like Julia, I've been inspired by space through different events in my life, and so here I am.
Yeah, then Alif.
Hi everyone, my name is Alif. I'm from Indonesia. I used to be a member of the Indonesian Scout movement, and like Daniel, I also was an Eagle Scout of the Indonesian Scout, and currently I'm an full-time academic in space law, mainly writing about satellite, geostationary orbits, and also new developments, particularly about the space resource exploration.
Wow. And our last one, Yulia.
Hi everyone, nice to see you all. And what brings me here is probably my space exploration endeavors, which started actually with not scouting, but what Julia said, that sometimes when you go camping and you look at the sky. And so for me, it was the night sky that made me fall in love with space. And so I pursued this passion, which currently brings me to a PhD studies, which I'm doing in France. Myself, I'm Russian and Swedish. And I'm trained as an aerospace engineer, but currently pursuing academia as well. And I'm just happy to here to discuss the synergies between scouting and education in space, because I'm also involved in educational activities and outreach for space with the younger generations. So I'm very excited to be here. Thank you.
Okay, thank you guys. Okay, let's start with Daniel's session. Daniel, I heard that NASA and scouting have a long history. Can you tell us more about this?
Yeah, well, it's actually there's a good number of astronauts and former astronauts who were actually in scouting, and a few of them were actually Eagle Scouts. Oh, and you have information. So, yes, more than 2/3 were involved in scouting. So yeah, I think if you look at NASA and what they're doing, they're more geared towards, unless you're very interested in rockets and everything, their presentations and demonstrations that they're giving is more towards, I would say, like imagination, inspiration, and curiosity. So if you go to like their museum at Kennedy Space Center, you're not going to find rocket equations and all these specific impulse things and all that stuff. You're going to sort of see the story of how people get from, humble beginning sort of thing into outer space. And I think it's tied to BSA, sort of, it's almost logical, because if you look at scouting, as you progress through scouting, you earn these merit badges and you get these certain skills, and you're basically building a resume for life. And so NASA's looking at that as sort of, young people who already have like a well-rounded foundation. And chances are most of those people go on, they seek an education, and they're also known for thinking outside the box. So it's and like we've seen before with the how Julia was talking about the Jamboree, it's sort of an increase in space programs, and I think it's also because it's moving at the same time as an increase in activity in the space industry. You know, we have SpaceX, and we have Blue Origin, and we have everyone else competing right now. And so that's really making an opportunity for young people to get involved and potentially in the future have careers in this field.
Right. Can you please share your personal experience as an Eagle Scout?
Well, I think as an Eagle Scout, it's sort of, you know, I think the statistic is that about 2% of Scouts become Eagle Scouts. So if it's showing like a little extra drive than most Scouts. So it's already a, not a lot of people get involved in scouting, at least in America, and then fewer people become Eagles. And so the more, how do I say it? The more these people progress, the more logical it is that, you know, you see these pretty famous astronauts in their background, they were former Scouts.
But what is the difference between Scout and Eagle Scout?
Eagle Scout is like you can go into the Scouts and then you have different ranks. And Eagle Scout is the top rank. So you have however many years to accomplish that, and you have to earn certain badges and certain, I guess you would call it certifications. Actually, I found my old merit badge sash. So here's an example of merit badges. But
that's
so you
cool.
you get those little things, and you know, they signify different skills and classes that you had to learn. And they're, sadly, when I was in, they didn't have that merit badge space exploration that Julia was showing. But same thing, you know, it's a good program to teach you all these different life skills, whether it's survival or financial readiness or whatever, atomic energy. It sort of creates well-rounded individuals, and I think that's what corporations and people in the space industry are looking for.
Daniel, so during your time, right, you said that merit badge like space exploration is still not like exist.
Right.
So back in those days, like what are the most relatable one to space or STEM that you have to
I think we had atomic energy. It's been a while. But yeah, atomic energy, chemistry. We did a lot of like wilderness survival, and that is sort of not so much as a resume builder, I would say, but definitely as an inspiration thing. You know, you go out in the woods, and then, you know, you have the biggest TV in the world. You look up and you see stars, and so Yeah, there's a few that are related to STEM, but I think it's the experience as a whole, which really helps kids get into this field.
Alif, you also have like an experience in the atomic energy badge, like merit badge as well, right? You want to share that a little bit?
Yeah, not really. I think it's just some sort of an anecdote because when Daniel mentioned the atomic energy badge, I once read that one of the scouts in the BSA tried to achieve that badge, and he made his own nuclear device. I think it was some sort of small reactor, but then he immediately got questioned by the government, the U.S. government, and then he earned the badge, but the device were immediately confiscated.
Yeah, from what I remember, we had like soybeans that were irradiated, and we just grew them. That was as exciting as it got. So, but yeah, I mean, it's an interesting story, but I think it also kind of shows that you know, it's inspiring kids to keep thinking besides just what's in the guidebook. So yeah.
Oh my god, it kills me. This is cool. This is super cool. It's more cool than Scout that I used to know.
Well, we're just like trying to focus on how not to burn the rice while they're learning about atomic and stuff.
Yep, right. I heard that often. So is it true that oftentimes American astronauts are scouts because scout in America is easier than other country to join. This is a question.
I don't know if I would say it's easier to join. I mean, you know, I only have my own experience, but I think it's something that is society here promotes. People are sort of proud when they see scouts either cleaning up a highway or doing activities. It's sort of a well-respected organization, and so it's not so much something that's easy or hard to get into, but it's something that I think is promoted, and so people naturally want to be part of it. If that answers your question.
Okay. Hey Julia, can you mind talking about your atomic? Let's see. Kennedy Space Center. Yeah, right. This is what is this, Daniel?
Okay, so these are a few pictures from the Kennedy Space Center, which I had the pleasure of visiting with Julia. But it shows examples of these different astronauts, specifically from the Challenger, which you know, had the tragedy where it exploded. But so they have these little display cases of personal effects, I guess, and quite a few of them, it shows articles from their childhood and from early on. And so I don't don't know if you could tell from the picture, but quite a few of them have, you know, either Cub Scout uniform or Boy Scout uniform, and you know, other astronauts had things that sort of define them and they were interested in. So in one sense, you know, if these things are displayed in memory of these astronauts who died, it kind of shows you how important scouting was to them and how it sort of helped formulate who they were, both as developing and as adults. So.
Mm.
So yes, if anyone comes to Florida, visit Kennedy Space Center. It does a good good job of showing the history of NASA and I guess space in general and where we're going in the future.
So before we move on, yeah, sorry, go on, Jake.
I have question for Daniel, but yeah, is it too late for me to start being a Leo Scout and collecting the badge?
Well, how age? So it's, you know, it's for young adults. So the cutoff is 18. So yeah, if you're over 18, you can't. But no, it's I forget exactly when it starts, but yeah, the cutoff age is 18. So I'm sorry, Gig.
Oh. It seems like Yulia have a question for you, Daniel.
Yeah, I was wondering, Daniel, when you showed your badge line, it was so impressive. I was just wondering, how long does it take to get all those badges? So before you were 18, when do you need to start to get that?
Well, it depends. You know, some merit badges are fairly simple, and so I don't know what I have that's simple. I don't know. Okay, I took photography, and I've always enjoyed photography, so that was very easy for me, and I did that within a day. But many merit badges, like in scouting, we have summer camp, which usually lasts about a week. So you go to these different camps, and there's it's up to the scouts what merit badges they want to take, and so you are allowed like 4, maybe 5 classes, and at the end of the week, if you fulfill the requirements, you get that merit badge. So again, it depends on how much free time the scouts want, but so yeah, it could be about a week, depending on the summer camp, or it could be a special class. Like I had a friend who was in scouting with me. Their uncle was actually an atomic engineer, and he taught the atomic energy merit badge. So it's sort of the availability of the class. It's not so much let me just go and get the merit badge. So yep.
Okay, all right. Daniel, I heard that from Julia that you has some experience with Buzz Aldrin. Can you share with us?
Ah, yes, and even have my picture. Yes. When I was younger, there with my brother, my local science museum offered different classes, and they have a planetarium which they named after Buzz Aldrin. And so one day he came to the science museum, and he was able to meet and talk to the kids who, you know, go to the classes and everything. But yeah, it was very interesting. He was a super nice guy, very interesting. And I remember asking him, you know, what is the moon like? You know, because he's the second person to walk on the moon. And he's like, well, it's very dusty. So it's interesting to, you know, you're expecting these fancy words like, oh, it was beautiful. Oh, it was, you know, but no, it's dusty. And I think it's very interesting when you meet someone with firsthand experience, because only they know how to describe something that they experienced. But I even remember asking him if I could touch his foot because it stepped on the moon, and he let us touch his foot. So I touched the foot that stepped on the moon. But one of those little kid things, but it's also one of those experiences that I still remember. So.
Wow, it's great. Thank you, Daniel. Okay, let's move on to Alif's session. Alif, as you are from Scout section, can you tell us more about scouting and how scouting influenced your thoughts on space activity?
Okay. Thank you, Geek, for the time and also the invitation. So, I think scouting has a lot of influence to, especially to the path that I took in my life, because I think I should share some sort of a short presentation. Yeah, because my background is in the academia and also focusing on space activities, but also I have experience in scouting. I bet you wouldn't mind if I share a little bit more of the philosophical side of scouting, because from the beginning, Baden-Powell himself expressed that scouting is not science to be solved. Is it a collection of doctrines and texts, or again, it is a military corps for drilling discipline into boys and repressing their individuality and initiative? I mean, scouting is a jolly game in the out of doors where men and boys can go adventuring together as older and younger brother, picking up health and happiness, handicraft and helpfulness. So from his own statement, we can see that it is more of a teaching method, and also wait for young boys and also girls to experience the outdoors and also learning new things. And it has really brought me personally to another level, because the learning part, it's never ending. It's always continuous, because as Daniel mentioned, we are mostly scouts, and by the age when we reach the age of 18, or at least in Indonesia when we reach the age of 26, then we move on to become the adult members, and we could not experience the same thing as the um, younger members of scout movement itself. And also, what I really see is that scouting's main mission is to contribute to the education of young people. So really, it's more of a method of non-formal education, I think. through a value system which is based on and law to help build a better world and where people are self-fulfilled as an individual and play a constructive role in society. So I would like to underline the constructive role in society. I think that is really what the main influence of scouting to my life so far, um, because that I have the experience of scouting, I could continue my education further, and also I have um, the chance to have a constructive role in my society by in my role as a legal academic. Um, I have the chance to give my thoughts, give my inputs to how the law should work, particularly in the aviation and space sector in the country, at, something like that.
Mm. Um, uh, sh- shall we move on to your next presentation?
Okay. So I think continuing from um, the philosophical side of scouting itself, there are three fundamental principles that is usually followed by all scouts. There are three duties that we need to follow. Uh, it is forming the basis of the scout's promise. First, it's duty to God. Uh, there is a person's relationship with the spiritual values of life, the fundamental belief in a force above mankind. You don't really have to be religious, but at least you uh, have a way to discover spiritual values of life itself, and also duty to others. That is the core of scouting activities. It's to develop person's relationship with and responsibility within its society in the broader sense, and also its local community, its country, and the world at large, as well as respect for others and for the natural world. So this is the part where scouts can improve um, its society in a more constructive role from its experience in during uh, the time of their youth, and also to apply them in later life. The last part is, I think, it's more important um, for a lot of scouts. It's duty to self. It's their responsibility to develop their own potential. Um, in my case, I developed my potential through continuing legal education, and also focusing to a certain um, very niche materials in law, particularly international law. There is the space law itself, which I think you wouldn't really expect uh, to see space activities from not from technology nor the astronauts activities, but we do still have the legal aspect of space activities.
Oh, all right.
Yeah. So I think um, we already seen Daniel shared his time on scouting. I also would like to share the picture when I was given the Eagle Scout badge when I was, I think, 15 years old. Um, and that was really the main time that I really experienced scouting as a real scout, because we do all of those educational activities, etc. But also, um, when by the time I reached 18, I had the chance to work with my NSO as some sort of a uh, national council for young adults. It's called the National Rubber Council, um, where I had the chance to develop further on how we should do scouting activities uh, in young adult levels, in young adult age. But I think back then we didn't really thought about focusing on space activities like doing stargazing, or like in the US, you have the atomic badge. Maybe in the future, we can also do that in Indonesian Scouts. This was the picture when I was inaugurated as the member of the national rover by the chief scout, the president himself. So continuing on to, yeah, sorry.
No, nothing. I'm just impressed.
Okay, so scouting itself, there are lots of layers in scouting, not just in national levels. In national levels, of course, most countries have their own national scout organization. Like in Indonesia, we have the national Indonesia Scout Movement. I think Thailand also have their own national organization, and the US, for example, have the Boy Scouts of America. But also, we really have to remember that World Scouting is an international movement. So we have the World Organization of Scout Movement, and also its um, regional organizations. And on those parts, particularly in the world level and also the regional level, uh, is where the methods of scouting, on how we should expand the activities further, it's being discussed and also um, uh, being built. For example, if you want to spread the methods in teaching space activities like the one in BSA, we could bring up the proposal to the conference level, in the regional, or in the world level. Because I think it's very technical and political, but there are ways for space activities to be developed within the scouting organization and scouting's non-formal education. So I think I will continue on to the your question about um, how does scouting influence my thoughts and my professional life as an academic. But I would like to begin from why did I choose air and space law? Because at first I would love to be an astronaut when I was a kid. Uh, I would dream to be a pilot, a military pilot, and then went on to join the astronaut program, be it in NASA or with the European Space Agency. Um, I actually got my first inspiration reading about Baden-Powell, the first chief scout of the World Scout movement. Uh, there was this biographical comic book in Indonesia that was depicting him, but also on the last pages, there are some pictures of Neil Armstrong as the first scout on the moon, and also a various scout doing space activities. And I was really inspired um, by reading um, that materials. But coming along within my life, I couldn't really take the effort to join the military and or becoming a pilot. So I was thinking I was also weak in science. So um, I was researching a little bit uh, which path should I took that will still have my contribution to space activities. So that's why I choose space law as my focus of study in when I joined law school. I'm I was grateful to have um, supervisors and mentors in law school that channel my interest in space activities since bachelor degree, and uh, getting my master degree, and also starting my PhD soon on space law. But yeah, it all begins with scouting and how it influenced me to continuing to develop myself further. So since I chose the space law, as my main subject in academia, I've been writing a lot of article mainly about the Artemis Accord, the legal document that was prepared by NASA to have joint cooperation in space in lunar activities countries. But when I wrote about that, I saw it was still focused on not on mutual cooperation, not in constructive role within society. So um, I tried to give my input on the matter. I think you can still read the article in the Leiden University Law blog. And also, I wrote about stationary orbit, particularly how disadvantaged states that countries do that have minimal or no um, capabilities to have or to engage in space activities to obtain a certain slots in the geostationary orbit. It's very technical, but I give some inputs about how they should have been prioritized if they have been given the rights, because they are there is the principles of space exploration. I think the province of mankind that each countries or the entire mankind have the same opportunity and the same access to space activities. For example, something like that. We can see that principles of scouting is also being implemented in legal aspects of space exploration. These are all the these are one of the a few principles that I found in the UN principles on space exploration and also the Outer Space Treaty. These four provinces embody the three main principles of scouting, like the duty to God and duty to others, and also duty to self. Uh, we can really implement those principles everywhere in the legal sense. Finally, I'm coming to the how scouting influenced my professional life as an academic. Well, it really did made me more adaptable to a lot of different situations, because sometimes I'll be moving uh, from provinces to provinces in Indonesia doing research, or from country to country attending conferences, etc., or giving presentations such as this. My years in scouting has given me a lot of confidence, a lot of um, um, uh, philosophical thoughts on how should I address certain things, but most importantly, on how should I treat my students, because every day I have to teach a lot of bachelor students, which is sometimes I don't think it's not just in Indonesia, but maybe in universities in Thailand, it feels a little bit more one-way communication between students and teachers. So what I will try to do is just apply whatever that I have learned from my scout leaders to teach something by sitting with the youth and the students. For example, the students in the university, and always position myself as being with them, not just above them or in front of them. Uh, Something like that, because it is important to engage the student better, especially when it comes to space law. There is Before there were not a lot of interest in the law school, but I think for the past 2 or 3 years there is an increasing number of students choosing the field of space law in the law school, and it is important uh, for the school and for me personally to engage them better, to teach them more about the subject, for me through the methods that I have learned in scouting. Finally, I will just close my presentation with the quote that one of my professors gave to me. So when I graduated from Leiden University's Institute of Air and Space Law, um, he gave me a book and he signed it with with this quote: "There's more to rockets than just technology." So he is being promotional about the space law or lawyerly aspect of space. But I think I would like to add there is more to space than just being an astronaut, because we have Yulia here. There is also doing the technological aspect of space activities, but also we have Daniel, I think, who will join the Space Force in the future, and also I will just be doing the lawyering in space activities. I think for me that's it. Thank you.
Wow, I'm so impressed. Is any panelists have a question?
I had a quick question. You said you were involved in Artemis and you found that it was not socially constructive. What did you find that wasn't constructive to society?
Okay. So I wasn't really involved in the project, but when I was reading about it, it was just being published. And I think there were only a few countries that joined. I think about 1.5 years ago, when I read about Italy and several European countries joining, and me and my other colleagues back in the university trying to wrote that it should have more access to other countries that is not usually um, have the cooperation with the United States, and also to I think to have more impact to society by giving access to extracted space resources in the future, to make it accessible to third countries that have no access to them, or is not really part of the agreement itself. But I think currently there have been a movement to develop it further, the to give access to disadvantaged country. For example, like Indonesia, we have minimal space activities, and there are talks in the at national level that we might join the accord to have better access to space resource activities in the future.
Thanks.
Thank you, Alif. Okay, let's move on to Yulia's session. How you sorry, how you feel, Julia, after we receive all this information?
I'm actually super excited to absorb it because I am outside. I haven't been a scout myself, and I can see that there are some synergies in what the scouts learn and how they learn, and how these things can be applied to space exploration. So I definitely now see why there are so many astronauts that were former scouts, and generally why kids are attracted to this activity and how much it could teach them. And especially, I did appreciate the part about the international collaboration and the possibilities for team working and leadership, because I think these are very important skills, and it's essential to be able to work in a team in space. None of the big space advancements can be done by any nation alone, and all the best things we've done, like the ISS or the plans for the moon or Mars, will be done in teams, in international cooperation. So I think that's really key to success, and therefore I'm really glad to see that this is part of scouting already, and it's been great for me to learn all this, actually.
So you are not from Scout section, but you're from education and space industry section, right?
Yes. So I'm now currently doing a PhD in space, well, in aerospace engineering, and not only within my PhD, but also outside of my PhD, I do quite a lot of activities with students and educating them, and I do engage in outreach, and also I'm part of the Space Generation Advisory Council, which is an organization where we are young professionals and students from all over the world, And so we carry on different projects, and we have a lot of projects on education. So that's the link with me here today.
Oh, okay. In your opinion, how important are education and youth program for you and the other? How important is this?
In short, huge. It's very important, but I'd like to make a little pause on the word education because I'm not sure, maybe we're not all on the same page about what we mean by education, because for many people, it's of course about school, so schooling education, and that's the first kind of big pillar, and of course, I would agree to that. But then, of course, it's very important to talk about home education and the culture around the children. So if we're talking about the youngest generation, if we're talking about school children, then the culture with the heritage of their nation or their country is very important. So, for example, I come originally from Russia, which is a country of deep heritage in space exploration and in space endeavors. And but surprisingly, where I come from, specifically in Russia, which is the far east side, which is far away from space industry and where all the things, the cool things happen, when you're far away from all that, then the space becomes also far away from you as a kid. So it's more difficult to enter into that. And you have to either move out, or maybe your family has to have some kind of support system, or your family has to be informed about it. So this is where home and culture becomes important as part of your education to enter into space, even to know about space. And of course, traditions. And this is where I'd like to touch a little bit upon such things as gender traditions and norms, because for some, in some places, in some countries, and I know and I've experienced that also myself, that depending on who you are, perhaps it's not perceived, or you're not projected onto the space sector and onto the certain roles in the space sector. And I think it's also part of education. It's part of educating kids about the fact that they can be part of the space sector, they can do these things, and they can project themselves onto being anything within the space sector. We've already heard. I'm really happy that we have Alif here, who talks about space lawyers. It's a really hot topic today because of the actually going forward to the moon again, and all the space endeavors that are going on. It's no longer, I agree, it's no longer just about being an astronaut, even though being an astronaut is very exciting and it's a star of our sector. But there's so much more in space, and we need to tell these kids about that. So traditions and norms and the culture is a very important part of education. And then I think today, which was not the case for me, but today the internet is a huge deal in education, because like for me, internet came when I was 11, and although like it did influence me in regards to space actually too, because I do remember the first thing I looked up was how to bring people to stars. I kid you not, that's true. That's the very first thing I looked up when I was 11. But today for kids, all information is out there. So it's important to consider the impact of internet and access to all these knowledge that it has on our kids and their education, and how that can be actually a step forward towards the space sector and the space education in particular. And then I would like to touch upon the extracurriculums, which is, what you do after school, which is maybe scouting for many people. And I think that's hugely important. But what's even more important in there, I think, are the fact that people can have choices, that kids should have choices. Like, for example, I was lucky that like my parents always let me choose what I wanted to do. And I know that not all people can have these choices. But even within some limits, if the children, I believe, if they have the choice between a couple of options of what they want to pursue, it teaches them these extra skills, of reflecting, and they approach these activities in a different way, I think, at least. And of course, on the side of education, there is also a very important thing, which is toys. And this is again where I'd like to draw attention to the differences even like gender differences, and the toys and the extracurriculums that we offer to kids, because they provoke such interests as space or STEM or more technical side of things, or not, if humanitarian sciences, depend, like these toys, they will twist the interest of kids in certain ways, or if not twist, then maybe magnify and endorse these interests. So I think we need to be careful with what do we reinforce, what kind of image we reinforce with the toys that we offer to kids, because toys should be like, available to all kids, no matter their gender, no matter where they come from, to actually let them explore their interests, and today there are lots of toys that are exploring space that kids can play with and already try to get a taste of that. So I personally am really excited about it. I don't think that was the case maybe so much back in the day. Maybe it was, but maybe not so much where I come from. And then again, another part of education, which is really important, I think, is encouragement and role modeling. So we've heard how Daniel met Buzz Aldrin, and that's a role model. That's a hero even. And I think it's very important for children to, well, we're not all going to be able to meet our heroes and role models in our lives, but to get exposed to them and to diverse role models. So if parents or older sisters and brothers or peers can help and expose the younger generations to different kinds of role models, so not only the ones that look like themselves and not only the ones that come from their own nations, but a new kind of person to follow on Instagram or Twitter, or to watch a new kind of cartoon, to see diversity in role models, and also in their professions and what they do. This kind of exposure actually builds a more diverse picture in kids' minds, and then they can project themselves onto these new roles. They can then have this confidence if they find something that links them to this role model. And if they're encouraged to pursue that interest, well, then they can start projecting themselves onto this. And this is crucial, I think. So this encouragement and role model exposure, it's very important in education. I believe it's all part of education. And I've mentioned the word exposure because I really believe in education by exposure. So to new projects, to new horizons, to new people, to new countries, if it's possible. I know it's not always possible to travel for people, but if it's possible to expose young children and older young adults to different kind of situations where they can learn, I think that's really crucial and key for space education. Because like I said before, we will always work in an international environment, and actually the space sector is quite small, surprisingly. There are quite few people, and we do meet in a couple of years, especially if you end up in a certain circle, like I am doing radiation protection of astronauts. And after a couple of years, you start meeting the same people in this circle. And then on the other side, I work with people with SGC, the Space Generation Advisory Council. And of course, we have that circle, and we meet a lot, and we work a lot together. So it's a small world, and these skills that people gain through exposure, the soft skills, as long as the hard skills, of course, the technical skills, I think it's crucially important. And that's really what's gonna not only open up for space, but also educate and pave the way for more and more people into the space sector. And this is what we love, actually. Personally, what I love most about space is, of course, it makes me dream. I'm all about Mars exploration personally, but what I love most about space is actually the people of the sector, because we're all very passionate people, and it's contagious, and it's just great to discuss with these people and to meet them. So I do believe that teamwork, international cooperation is very important, and that's why I was a little bit surprised to hear that happens in scouting, but I was also very happy to hear that, because surprised and happy, yes, because I think that teaches already the skills that I needed later.
Wow. Oh my God. So I have a question for you. Who is your role model?
Oh, I have to say my mom because,
Ah,
and I can explain because she is a strong woman who is very extremely kind and puts her dear people before her actually. But she is one of those strong women has never had to like explain her choices, explain herself. She does things for the best of her community, which is sometimes an extended community. She is a caretaker. And then the choices she makes, she doesn't have to explain them because, well, she assumes the responsibility over them. And I think it's very important. And she's been super supportive of all my choices. And so she, yes, in this sense, she is my role model.
oh, okay, thank you, Yulia. Is anybody of our panelists have a question for Yulia?
I was thinking it was just interesting how like traveling and experiencing things, and I think it was one of my spring breaks. I actually went to Russia and I visited Moscow and St. Petersburg, and they have the space monument for Yuri Gagarin and everything there. But it was funny because that was the first time I understood the Soyuz meant friendship. Am I correct?
Like it means sort of connection, not just friendship, but like anything that is like a unity. Yeah.
Right, and I think it sort of it was just like eye-opening. I mean, Moscow, you have a lot of Soviet architecture, and then all of a sudden, oh, this little unity thing. I mean, maybe that goes with Soviet stuff, but it was just interesting thing to realize that probably if I never went there, I would be like, okay, it's just a Russian rocket. But I think it's kind of interesting because, like you were saying, if you travel and you experience things, you can kind of see how, besides politics, how interconnected all these countries are.
Yes, definitely. I agree with you. Absolutely. And of course, if you can travel, that's just the best, right? But also for those of us who can't travel, and today, luckily, for the access to internet, and I know that still there are countries that are struggling with a stable and free connection to internet. But those who can have that, I would just suggest that pair up with someone from another country and do a project together, or even do a tandem kind of discussions together about the history of space, or something that you didn't necessarily know, and ask that person, because the cultural background and heritage will like really enlighten you. What you said is really important. It's like myself, I've traveled quite a bit and changed countries several times, and by meeting people and talking to them, that's how like you learn so much about yourself as well, about your sort of the biases of your own culture and background, and what has been taught to you in what ways. And I think it's hugely important. Like, for example, I was lucky, we at school, we got to collaborate with an Indian institute on an Indo-French project, and it was fantastic. We got to learn so much of course, we did a lot of technical stuff. Of course, we proposed a mission to Mars, and we used their Indian rocket, etc., etc. But what was the most exciting is actually to learn the cultural differences. How do we hold a conversation? How do we hold a professional meeting between the two countries? How do we agree when we don't nod in the same way, when we don't nod yes in the same way? It was amazing. And so this exposure again is crucial. Yeah.
Yeah, and I had one little question. Since you're in the aerospace industry, like what advice would you give like younger people who also want to be involved in, say, your field?
Younger, you mean Before university or already university?
Yeah. But before university, someone who's interested in this, and maybe they hear about what you're doing and they want to follow your footsteps.
Yeah, I would say really don't be afraid to reach out. Myself, I was afraid to reach out. I thought that yes, you need to do everything by yourself and struggle a lot and get there and do through hard work, you get there. Hard work is important, but I think also what's very important is luck. And to enhance the chances of your luck, you need to try to propose, like put yourself out there. So if you find an interesting person or an interesting topic, try to dig around, especially now with the internet, it's accessible. We can find people who do these really interesting things in space. And there are a lot of outreach communities now and people who are happy to volunteer and talk to younger generations about what they do. So I would really, really encourage even to reach out. But it's important also to know how to reach out because to be more, again, to sort of increase your luck, when you do reach out to someone, and that also goes for already university students, because sometimes they reach out, they don't really know how to do it, but the most important thing is to start a connection with another person, and that begins with an interest proposal, with saying that I'm interested in your work, I'm interested in what you do, but also in offering something that I would like to discuss with you, or I have a few questions, or I can offer you an opinion. Because actually what people don't realize is that people who are already doing something very specific, for example, I do radiation protection using regolith on the moon. I would love to hear an opinion of somebody who is doing ceramics or outside of it, or a younger student who is just interested in it, to ask me questions, because that will bring me forward somewhere, or give me an opinion on my work, you know. So I think don't be scared to reach out to people, but be respectful of their time and prepare some kind of ground to make a connection. So to start a mentorship sort of relationship, you know, because then that person will give you all the information and all the tips into really how to get there, how to enter. But another very important point, especially for younger generations of before university, is to involve your parents and your support system. So within the Space Generation Advisory Council, I'm co-leading a project group called the Diversity and Gender Equality Project Group, where we work on these involving different genders and more diverse profiles into the space sector. And we have a project which is called Padawans, which is about educating and outreach to younger generations. And so what we've noticed, actually through research, is that parents often become a last sort of barrier between kids who are already interested in space and who have already identified it for themselves, and who voice that interest, and then parents who have not been exposed themselves to the different opportunities in space, the parents who unfortunately only think that space is all about being an astronaut, and maybe they cannot support that kind of profession for their kids, or they just don't see it for their kids, or they're scared about it because, you know, for example, my mom was worried that I was gonna fly off to Mars one day. But parents who are not exposed to the space sector themselves, they may become a barrier for their kids. They may say, "Oh, what are you talking about? What are you dreaming about being an astronaut now?" You know, and that can just kill it for kids, especially at certain ages and at certain stages of that interest. So if you are that brave kid, or if you are the sort of older sister, brother, and you see that your younger siblings are interested in space, or your maybe friends, try to expose your parents as well to the multitude of space opportunities through, you know, watching a movie together about the different space exploration or preparation of a mission or documentary, or maybe, I don't know, read some articles, or because parents need to be on board, I think, when we're talking about children that are before, or young adults that are before university, to support that so that they don't become that final sort of frontier. It's very important.
That's a good point. I didn't think about that, but yeah, parents, yeah, they could either make or break, you know, your dreams. So, and it's funny because I know, like with everything going on with SpaceX, I just pull up YouTube and I'm watching it, and it's funny because my mom had no interest in space. She doesn't even like sci-fi movies. And now she's like, "Oh, when's the next launch? Oh, what are they doing? Oh." And it's funny how, you know, when you involve your family, it's like it's it could do a lot, I guess, for your self-esteem, but also support, you know, your future goals. So no, it's an interesting point.
Okay. Alif, would you like to share your opinion with us?
Yeah, at first I was going to ask Yulia about how do we integrate those um, interests in or um, space activities into scouting, because I think not just in Indonesia, but I think also in Thailand and also in various countries which have large number of scout members, the interest in scouting is steadily decreasing. But we all know uh, the implied importance of education through scouting, and I think also there is a similar question in the chat about it. So. How do we encourage or integrate space education in scouting? Because apart from the Boy Scout of America with its STEM program, I don't think um, we have similar programs in other national scout movement.
So I don't know, off the top of my head, I'm thinking if you could introduce more of these specific badges that are just related to space, like exploring stars and watching, um, you know, the planet movements, or I don't know, the lunar phases. Because if you are there for a few days, or you could do synergies between our planet and other planets, you know, because the one key thing I'm thinking is that space exploration and the going outside of the Earth really gave rise to planetary protection and climate action, because we saw our world from outside, right, for the first time. And so that's the really huge kind of benefit of space exploration. One off, of course, I mean, there are many benefits in space exploration, but since scouting is so near to nature and you're there a lot out there in the woods and survival, and it's not all about that as far as I understand, but a lot of that time is out in nature. Maybe you could explore how these activities can be enhanced, or how some space technologies like Earth observation could enhance, you know, our climate action, or you know, supporting our ecosystems, etc. Because there's a lot that the space sector has to offer there. And another idea is, maybe, I don't know, maybe you could invite on some special trips or some special educational outreach programs, maybe you could invite the space professionals. For example, what we do with Padawans project is that we send out a volunteer from our team to a school, and we invite children and their parents to involve the parents, and we talk about what that space professional does, and then they do an activity together. So maybe your activity could be tailored to scouting, but inspired from space, and like that you will introduce space through scouting. This is just thinking off the top of my head, but I do believe that like the hands-on experiences that you have in scouting and the connection between space and Earth observation and nature, that is the key factors which could really interlock, and you could really grow something big and important for the curriculum there. I hope so.
If I can ask a follow-up, I was just wondering, because you mentioned culture, and you know, with the last question, do you think it's more challenging to integrate STEM in developing nations and in like nations with, you know, completely different cultures?
Who's the question to?
To you. Sorry.
This is a tough question. No, I don't think that it's more difficult. It has to be tailored, but just like everything has to be tailored, there is this term which is called localization. Localization of educational materials, localization of translated educational materials, meaning that if I today publish a book about lunar exploration and regolith in English with my cultural background, and I want it to be read by kids in Indonesia, it's not enough to just translate it literally. There should be a localization step where it is localized to the culture, etc., so that it's accepted there better. So I don't think it's more difficult like that. It's just it has to be done more thought through or more localized, like tailored, you know, in the same way that I do believe we need to tailor outreach and education about space to girls and to non-binary children, because today it's if it's not talked about, then we're not gonna notice the gender differences. When we're not looking at something, we don't notice it. It's like when we pretend there's no problem, there is no problem. And I'm not saying it's a problem. It's just it needs to be tailored. So like Black education and outreach should be tailored to girls as well, and they shouldn't be omitted. Then also when we are talking about building up educational STEM programs in developing countries or promoting the space development in non-spacefaring nations, I don't think it's necessarily more difficult per se. It just has to be done according to the needs, according to that culture. But one important thing is that actually I think what shouldn't be forgotten today, and we have an expert here about this on the legal side. We talk about a lot about their Artemis Accords and other types of legal stuff in space and what's going to happen. And I believe that, for example, there we have to make an effort to invite nations that are not yet spacefaring nations or just developing their space industry into the table, to the discussion table already now. Not wait for them to become big actors in space, because they will become big actors in space in 20 years. But that'll be too late if the laws and treaties are already all signed today without them. You know, so I think we need to think ahead. So maybe it's not more difficult, it's just more strategic. Tailored and strategic and thinking ahead, I think, and being more open-minded and even talking about it. I think that's great. I mean, I don't think we were talking about these things back in the day. I think today we're really making progress by just talking about it already.
All right. Okay, let's move on to our last section, which is Q&A section. Yeah. Juliah, do you have anything to say? Oh, right. Backward. What do the panelists think of this, and what do they believe is being done well or could be improved upon, and general views on topic cover? Start with Daniel.
I believe that you know, of all the topics that we covered, I think it kind of shows that we are sort of as a global community, we're moving in the right direction. You know, as we see here, we have you know, sort of a informal representation from Thailand, Russia, and Indonesia, and America. So it's showing that this has sort of grown worldwide, and I think it's allowing people to realize that you know, if you're interested in space, you don't have to be part of NASA. You don't have to be part of ESA. You don't have to be an astronaut. You know, you could, you know, there's thousands, millions parts to a, you know, the physical aspect of rocketry and whatnot, and you know, much more in general. And I think it's sort of showing that, you know, especially for kids, if you have even the slightest interest, there's plenty of opportunity to get involved. So same thing. It's just you know, like Yulia was saying, we have to sort of have society nurture this curiosity and interest, and that way, you know, we can keep on growing and keep on going forward. And that's what I got.
Thank you. What about you, Alif?
Yeah. So for me, from what we have been discussing since the beginning, I think there is a lot of opportunity for scouting to adapt space-related activities within its activity. Be it to pursue an achievement of merit badges, or to arouse interest, to learn more about space-related activities. And I think this will be a great opportunity for the work organization of Scout movement to have better advertisational material, because they are pursuing a target of 100 million membership. I think it was planned to be in 2021, but we are almost at the end of the year, and they still haven't reached the target. I think we are still with 57 million, so we're still a long way to go. And I believe that space-related activities beyond going to space, if applied to scouting curriculum or methods, can be a great tool to promote better activities or awareness in joining the Scout movement. And that's it from me.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Then our last one, Julia. What about you?
Yeah, so for me, thanks a lot. First of all, I learned a lot about scouting, and I think it's really exciting. So that's a great activity, and also learned about the similarities between what the skills that people learn in scouting and that people kind of need in space exploration and succeeding at it, and also maybe generally in STEM. And what I'd like to add to what has been already previously said, the beautiful things that were summarized by Daniel and Alif, I could add maybe that on top of us already making improvements into going more diverse and open-minded about space exploration, I think that both, possibly the scouting world and the space world, I can definitely speak for the space world, but I think I kind of heard that from the scouting world could also benefit from more tailored and extensive outreach and communication, especially outreach, to involve more diverse profiles, so minority groups, into their activities. So I already talked about the gender diversity and also diverse profiles. So because you don't necessarily need a technical background to enter the space sector or to be part of it. Even you could be a comics book writer, and you're still part of space if you write about space. So this diversity, we need to enhance it, and we need to enhance the steps towards it. And one first step, I think, is the outreach and tailored outreach involving more different profiles and when we talk to them, so that they can identify themselves and start projecting themselves onto this field. And I think that possibly scouting could also benefit from it. And then also maybe another thing that we could think about, and also possibly both worlds, I can definitely speak for space, that also what we study and what we focus our resources in this sector could also be diversified in terms of projects. Like if we talked a lot about astronauts, and if we talk about astronaut health, then we should maybe talk about female astronaut health, or we should talk about how we can provide opportunities for differently abled people to go to space and how to support that life in space, etc. So these kind of more diverse projects and mindsets, I think, could benefit both. I don't know about scouting, maybe it already is the case, but what about opening up the scouting community through projects and the research that's being done, or the activities that's being done, open up the scope like that?
Okay, thank you. Now it's time to move on to Q&A session. Our first question here is for Alif. Do you have specific badges for STEM related in Indonesia?
I don't think we have really that specific badges, but we have decently related activities for the merit badge. For example, we have the radio communication badge, where we do communication through shortwave or ham radio or CB, etc. But now I think with the cooperation between the National Scout Organization and the amateur radio organization in Indonesia, we are starting to engage more scouts in doing those radio activities, particularly with satellite communication, because the amateur radio organization is one of the few entities in Indonesia who have satellites placed in orbit to have um, um, informal activities with radio communication. But I think that's it. That is the only thing related to space in Indonesian Scout.
Do you have any of them?
Sorry, I could.
Do you have any of the badges?
I couldn't find it, unfortunately. I've been looking for it the entire day because I went to the Netherlands a couple of years ago, and I just got back recently, so I still couldn't find most of my things. Maybe it's still in one of the boxes.
Oh, it's fine. It's all right. Thank you, Alif. And the next question is, can you suggest the best way to encourage, inspire, integrate space education during scouting? Do you think we need to directly embed the value skill needed in curriculum, or we could just do it as separate programs? He asked all the panelists, so let's start with Daniel.
Okay. So I'm just trying to, I know it's two parts, but I would say, the main thing in scouting that we do is we go camping, and then we sort of design our camp how we want. Different activities, things we're going to see. If the campground is on a national park that has historical elements, then we'll go and visit those. But I think the easiest thing to do is because if there's one thing I in scouting is that dads who help in scouting are just as interested, if not more, in some of this stuff. Like Yulia said, if you can encourage your family to become supportive. I went on one camping trip, and this guy brought, this huge telescope, and that was the, yeah, we had our little fire over there, but everyone was around this telescope. It was like, oh, let's look at Saturn or whatever. So just these little activities that you can do, because I think if you look back at that age, kids are sort of like a sponge, and not just for information, but interest. You show them a little something, and they're like, oh, wow, let's try that. And, they like to try different things and look into different things. So you can, it's not so much something that you are necessarily introducing something new, but it's like you're encouraging the growth of an interest that they may already have. Or, some kids have never looked through a telescope before. So just by having it, all of a sudden you spark an interest. And from there, you could have the next astronaut, you could have the next president of NASA, who knows? As far as the second question, directly embedding the skills into the curriculum, I could see it being, like I said, if you have it like, it depends what your scouting troop does. We have a lot of limiting factors like money and everything. But, if someone has a telescope, bring the telescope on the camp. As far as like curriculum though, I think it would be cool to have a camp designed around that, or I think now they just introduced a new merit badge, space exploration. If I was in scouting, I would do that. They're talking a lot about deep space, but still, this is it's not something you can touch right now. It's something light years away. So it's almost pure imagination, and I think that's part of what's special in scouting and for kids at this age, that you can do something related to your imagination, your curiosity, and what you're interested in. That was sort of long-winded, but I hope it answered that question.
Okay, all right. Move to Alif.
Yeah. So for me, I think it's a little bit more or less same with Daniel. We really need to introduce the youth to space-related activities, starting like from stargazing in camps, or like Julia mentioned, have a reach or contact with people in space industries, and invite them to give presentations, or also some sort of materials that will encourage the youth to engage in space related activities. But if we're talking about integrating it to scouting activities, that's what I was also thinking. That is important to have it as a merit badge as well. Those activities, it needs to be tailored accordingly, depending on the different countries or different cultures, most certainly. So it is in the long term, it's a massive effort that should involve not just the youth, not just the young adults, but also the adults within the program. Because I think most kids, most children, and also the young adults, when they join scouting, they are trying to achieve something. For me personally, it was to achieve like the highest honor and also the most skills um, obtainable, of course, or learnable by me. I think it will be the same as well with the other children and also the other youth. Uh, it will be really interesting for them to have uh, something to achieve when it comes to space activities in relation to scouting.
Okay, right. What about what about you, Julia?
So I think we already covered that in the talk, and also now the previous speakers brilliantly again suggested really good points, and without too much overlap or repetition, I think the best way is always communication. So ask the kids what they are interested in and follow that. And if they are not, that means they haven't been exposed to any kind of sort of space stuff yet. So then be ready to propose some possible things, like make your satellite out of what you can find in the woods. I just thought about that, and it could be fun. And we did that once at a actually with our young professionals and students. We had a webinar where we had to grab anything we had at home and make a satellite. It was a ridiculous kind of a satellite, but it had to resemble a satellite. And I realized it's a fun, ridiculous activity, but you think about the fact that it has solar panels and a structure and an antenna to communicate with the Earth, etc. You have to think about these things. So even a ridiculous, simple activity, it's not that ridiculous. It's educational, and most importantly, they will get to teamwork and pair up, etc. Or maybe, I don't know, they could think about how they would establish the first communication if aliens ever come to Earth, and what would they do then? It's so much to explore there, but I think it should be really taking the root from the interest of the kids, or the kids. I always say the kids, but I mean the young adults or the people who participate in the scouting activities. And that's what Daniel also said, like to see what they are interested in and grow from that. I think that's the best way, to be honest. But the tools that you need is, yes, you need people who are knowledgeable about space, but also knowledgeable about the culture and the local both resources and what you can do, what you cannot do. So that's important. And then I think I almost always would say that you can, of course, directly, and you should embed the values and skills in all kinds of educational activities, whether that's scouting or schooling or, I don't know, outreach. Of course, strive for including and embedding the values and skills behind, but of course, it's not that easy to say how to do that, but that would be my answer.
Yeah, here I also have a question. Let's ask.
Hey guys, so like from what I've been, like from all the information that I've received from this talk, I kind of separate like the scouting and space exploration into like two categories, which is scouting is more about nurturing and purely about focusing on how one individuals or students is like growing up and becoming responsible and a useful adult or better citizens, right? And for space exploration, it's like the engineering parts, the practical part, and then also it's also represent like progression and stuff like that. This might be more in the like how do I say? This question would be more towards like Alif and Yulia. I would say that like Alif, like with this scouting, right? One crucial thing that it kind of taught us is that for us to be able to put other people before us, like to be more than just yourself, and I just kind of wanted to know, you as a lecturer, how important it is to be able to see your students, as an equal or before you, and not trying to kind of like be like, I'm your teacher and, come and learn things from me, but rather in more humble or nurturing approach, and how that could be potentially be a good thing, or if you agree in the statement that I just said, or what's your opinions on it?
Okay, yeah. So I think what you highlighted is a challenge that has been going on within the um, educations, at least in Indonesia, but I'm sure that you have experienced as well in Thailand, or maybe Yulia in Russia as well, because sometimes the um, teachers or lecturers would position themselves as higher or above the children, whereas I think it would be more beneficial for the education to position the teacher alongside or at least around um, the student itself. For me personally, I always try to invest my time more on my students, and um, have them encourage them to talk to me, and as Yulia said, encourage them to have communication, uh, to um, to make them fear less of the lecturer, and also to encourage them to explore what they have in mind, not just in the legal aspect, but also um, in the um, in space, in the sense of space activities. But yeah, I agree with you. It's a little bit difficult based on the different cultures. I've experienced the first time that uh, uh, lecturers positioning themselves as like colleagues and equals of the students when I was pursuing my master degree back in the Netherlands. And the teacher there was so amiable, even outside of the class, and they are very approachable, accessible. And even after I graduated, they still answered my questions, etc. So yeah, it is important to have better communications and position yourself, if you're a teacher or a lecturer, in a more amiable way to the students.
Thank you for your answer. And for Yulia as well, like I'm not sure how it is in in the space sectors and then in the research field and stuff. Because sometimes I feel like maybe with Scout, right, you still have all this principle. So when you kind of live, carry on your life and live, you kind of remember those principles. Okay, it's good to be the supporter of this new generations. I'm not sure how it is in the space industry. If you would have any more insight or informations on that.
You mean to support what exactly in the space industry?
I'm just kind of curious, like, if when it comes to mentorship, is it being nurtured similar way as the Scout,
Okay.
right?
Yeah. So I think now we are getting into the time when really mentoring and mentorship and also sponsoring, that's a new kind of term, really becomes important, central, accepted, and part of the whole educational system in space. Because I think that kind of grew out of the fact that, again, the space sector is like a ball. It's really interconnected, and we know each other, and then we extend the helping hand sometimes to younger generations, or we like to work with them. I think that came also with a sort of, I hope, well, I'd like to think that it came with a sort of a little bit of a cognitive shift or perspective that we're starting to have. And I hope that we're going to continue to really have that, because the shift is the stigma of mistakes. I think it starts with the culture of STEM, the culture of education. Also, that's what your previous question to Alif was about, that when the teacher is at the top of the sort of the pedestal, and because the teacher knows it all, and then the teacher cannot make mistakes, and the students cannot make mistakes, and they grow up and they become professionals, and as engineers they cannot make mistakes. Nobody can make mistakes. So the stigma of mistakes is there, has been there, it's still there, and that becomes a barrier. At the same time, I'm not saying that we should all not care about making mistakes in the space exploration and the space industry. No, but the stigmatization of making mistakes in education, that has to go. And I think the encouragement and mentorship, that kind of grew out of the fact that now, okay, we have to accept that people make mistakes, people make different choices, they change their choices, and we need someone to guide them between these mistakes, between these shifts. And this guide becomes it's a mentor. And I think, I've experienced that in my myself, but I've experienced it quite late. I've only gotten mentors really just recently, like a couple of years ago. I didn't have mentors for my bachelor's or master's, but I see that now the people that I'm a mentor to as well, I do encourage others to go find mentors, because it's just important to get new perspectives, new ideas, precisely because almost everything is within reach once you are in space sector. It's not that easy to change, but it's kind of easy to get some knowledge about this or that, or get on board with another project, So to swim in this realm, you kind of need a guide, or at least an opinion, and that's a mentor. So I think this nurturing relationship is really taking its space in the space sector. I can see that.
Thank you. Before I'm off, I just wanted to say, thank you so much for sharing all your insight and information, and especially learning a bit more about you, and then you as an individual as well. It's kind of refreshing to know that, for sure, if you go on and to mentor somebody, so giving us, knowledge, it would come from a really humble place that could really help us grow to a better persons, and even prosper, and to really pursue in innovations. So thank you.
Yeah. Okay, I think that's it for today, right? And I have to thanks Daniel, Alif, and Julia for being here today, and your information is so useful. Okay, the audience, I would like to thank you guys to watch it until now. So we hope we will see you next time. And thank you for today. That's it. Bye bye.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.